All right, so we got our pieces of 16 gauge cut out, and what I've gone ahead and done is mark on here what size and where they go. So we got 2 of each piece, identical. Here's your sides. We got a front, a back, we got a top. This will be the very last piece we put on, and we're going to start with the bottom. Now, I've done a few videos on Flux Core Welding, and they've all been heavier gauge stuff. I have a couple previous videos that are with 18 gauge, but today we're using 16 gauge. I don't know if you can see that, but thin sheet metal nonetheless. And if you're working on an older vehicle, it's going to be 16 gauge, 18 gauge in that area, so the process is about the same. Now I am going to be using these little magnets that we got at Harbor Freight. They're not real strong, but they're strong enough for what we're doing, and they're the perfect size. So this is what we're going to be doing. So now we got that going, got it mocked up, held in place. You got your anti-spatter spray down. The biggest thing with welding is you want to make sure that you are comfortable. The more comfortable you are, the better your welds are going to be. Now all we're going to do is we're going to tack this just to hold it. Okay. We got her tacked in. Just like that. And as you can see, they're just little tiny welds. It's super thin. You can see a little bit of weld come through right there. See if we can dull down the light for you, get a better shot. And now that you got that, you can take one of your sides, now like I said, I didn't cut it exactly how I want it, so what we're gonna do is we'll get this tacked into place. And then we'll take a grinder and a flap disc, and we'll trim off this excess. It's probably a little less than a 1/4 inch too. So like I said, it's just a little bit longer than the base plate down here. Not a big deal. So you take a grinder and you can just trim that down, and you can just use a flap disc, just, you know, back and forth, back and forth. So we got that lined up now. We're going to go ahead and put a couple of tack welds on there just to hold it in place. Now it's just thin sheet metal, so you don't want to run any stringers on it. You're just going to keep tack welding until you get it all filled in. Now if you're looking to do sheet metal repair on your vehicle, this is going to be good practice for welding that up, because you're going to see how it pulls and warps. No matter what you do when you're welding metal, you're going to warp it, because it shrinks in and then it expands as it cools. So here we go. All right, so now another thing you want to think about is when you're doing these little spot welds, is you don't want to really hold the trigger down too long. So maybe count to 1/1000th as you're pulling the trigger, and once you get to the end of that, whether you say it out loud or in your head, let go of the trigger. That way you don't burn through. All right, we got that corner, and now we need to get the bottom. All right, there be one side. All right, so now, like I was saying, because these aren't cut perfect, and that's all right. You can see right there that side piece is just a skosh longer than the base. Now what we're going to do is we're going to, well, actually there's a number of ways we can do it. We can trim this off right now, or we can actually put in our front panel and then grind off the excess. Actually, I think that's what we'll do, because this side here is a little taller than back here on this panel, so we'll go ahead and do this, and that'll give us our gauge for how much we need to trim down. Make it easier. Alright, so what I ended up doing was I took the angle grinder here and I trimmed down this side, and then I had to take a little bit off of this side right here to get it to fit, because like I said, none of this was cut right. This is all from a leftover piece of 16 gauge that I had, which wasn't exactly square to begin with. So anyway, we got it slid down in there, and there's a little bit of a lip right here. So what you can do is you can take a small hammer or whatever you got. We're just using a piece of 1/2 inch round bar, and we're going to tap it gently into place. All right, now We got it pretty much where we want it. All right, folks, so now we've gotten the box put together, and we've got it all welded up, and I'm going to show you real quick what it should technically look like, give or take, once you got it done. So this is what it looks like. This is using Fluxcore. Now if you notice all the spatter, those little BBs, sometimes you can chip them off with your finger. You can take a piece of metal or a scraper, but the most effective way to get all this stuff off, this rough BB spatter from your Fluxcore, is one of these. You don't got to get super aggressive because you don't want to take away from the parent metal. So you would just take this, and just apply light pressure, and it comes right off. It gets super smooth. You'll have to get a little more aggressive down here where your welds are. I'm going to wire wheel this, and I'm going to show you what it looks like without all the flux powder over it. And please keep in mind that these are little heat-seeking missiles. They do break off, and they will take an eyeball out. And occasionally they'll take your shirt off, and you'll find these stuck in your skin through your shirt. So please wear eye protection. Alright, so we got it all wire wheeled. We got most of the flux powder off. This stuff it's what keeps the weld from getting atmospheric contamination from the air that you breathe. So you don't have to get it all off. It doesn't have to be perfect. This is just for demonstration, because once you grind your welds down, this is going to come off, this little powder stuff. So, and then like I said, you can take your angle grinder and just lightly go across this and get all these little BBs off, or you can take a scraper and you can scrape that off too, however you want to do it. Anyway, so we've got, I'll show you right here, and I left this unwelded to show you something. So when you're doing sheet metal, you're gonna put a spot or a tack weld, spot weld, move over an inch, put another one, move over an inch, put another one, and you just keep going around until these bare spots are all welded. You just keep going inch by inch. So what I mean, and like what I mean by that is what I was just saying. one weld, move an inch, do another, moving over another inch, do another, skip another inch, do another, and you keep doing that all the way around wherever you're going to be welding at until you start running out of inches to skip. And at that point, what you're going to do, and you can actually start doing it sooner than that as you're moving around, is you want to kind of overlap the weld you're about to make partially on top of the weld that you already did. What that helps do is fill in all the gaps and reduces the risk of getting pinholes in there. And so once you've done that and you've gone all the way around, you're going to get something that looks like, now let's find you a good angle here. Like this. You're completely welded top to bottom. So your welds are going to vary depending on your settings and how long you hold it. This is ideally right here what you want it to look like. Right where my finger's at. These are some higher taller welds. They're more proud, and that's okay too, is you're going to grind all this down. This exercise, not only is it functional because you get a perfectly good useful steel box with a lid, and we will be doing the lid and a latch system for that, so don't worry folks, the best part's to come. But you want to grind this down until it's nice and smooth and you can't feel none of that, so it looks like it was supposed to be that way, nice and smooth. You want it to be as smooth as the inside, but be careful that you only grind on the weld and not the parent material, because you don't want to thin this out. Now this is 16 gauge. There's a fair amount of meat here as far as sheet metal goes, but you grind it enough, you end up with 18, or I'm sorry, 20 gauge, or sorry, 18 gauge. You grind that more, you end up with 20. Next thing you end up with 22. Now, one thing to remember about sheet metal, and this applies to wire also, the bigger the number, the thinner the sheet metal is, and the smaller diameter your wire is. The smaller the number, the thicker the sheet metal. So 16 gauge is thicker than 18, 18 is thicker than 20, and so on. And then you've got 14 gauge, which is quite a bit thicker than this, and you get all the way down. Excuse me. So if this was a piece of 10 gauge, or even 1/8 inch, which is roughly 10 gauge, you wouldn't have to do the spot welds. You could just run a bead, run like a 4-inch, 1 inch, 2 inch, 3 inch, 4 inch bead, stop, let it cool, go to another section, do the same thing. But before you run a string, as opposed to doing these spot welds, make sure that you tack it in different position or places on here. That way it doesn't pull one way or the other, it stays in the same spot. Because when you add that kind of heat to sheet metal, you're shrinking the metal, and so it's going to do this, and then it's going to warp, and then you're going to have something that kind of does, like say it's supposed to be flat like this, next thing you know one side's doing this, or it's bending out the other way. Just something to keep in mind. Take your time. It's all fixable. Unless you warp it, then you got to really hammer it or just start over. So yeah, so what we're going to do now is I'm going to clean up all these welds, and I'm going to actually shave this edge down a little bit. No, actually I'm not. Remember I was telling you earlier in the video, it's easier to take away material than add it. Well, this is too short. It was cut at a skewed angle. It's shorter here than it is over here. Anywho's and way. We're going to grind this down. Now real quick, I want to show you something. Grab the camera. Remember the anti-spatter spray we sprayed on our workpiece on the table? You see these BBs on here? They're melted to the metal. Alright. You see this pile right here? These are all little spatter BBs that didn't stick to the table. Because of the anti-spatter spray. This is, look how easy that is. It's just like a really coarse powder, and all that is welding BBs that are like this, that are stuck to the material. So make your life easier, get you some of this. It doesn't have to be that brand. This just happens to be what's available at my local steel yard, and it's super cheap. I think this is, it's under 12 bucks. So you can get it on Amazon, you can get your local steel yard most likely, and I think some farm and ranch stores carry that also. So now what we're going to do is we're going to run this flap disc out until it's just useless and grind it. So we'll do that. Also, this is good practice, one, for cutting out your dimensions. Figuring out how to put it together, welding, and grinding. There's a lot of different things in this little job that helps build your skills as a beginner. So it's very, very useful. Even if you didn't need the box, the practices and techniques that you can practice and build and make better by just building a simple box out of metal like this goes a long way for future projects that are much more complex. Alright, so we went a little bit of a different route. It just wasn't cooperating, and also I couldn't accomplish what I wanted to show you. So, and that's a timing thing. Just, that's what that is. Anyway, so what we did differently was we did this. We put the hinge on the outside. And so we got plenty good penetration. Now, like I said earlier in the video, this is just leftover 16 gauge that was already in pieces, or not usable pieces for anything I had going on currently. So if you got a bunch of scrap, hang on to it, because it comes in useful, especially when you're learning and you're practicing. It's kind of like that dad that's had that piece of wood since the 90s, and finally after 30 years he found that one use for it. You know what I mean? So that's what this is. And we're gonna clean it up. I haven't decided what I want to do for a latch system. I actually might not even put a latch on it, to be honest with you. But more so than that, it's a great way to get practice on several things. One, you get to practice on thin gauge sheet metal. 16 gauge is thicker than any cars are made out of today, but it's pretty close to the thickness of old school cars, you know, from the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. So there's that. Now, what's going on here? Sorry, camera's acting up. You get practice on a couple of things, like I was just saying. Sorry, I got distracted. Practicing flux core welding thin sheet metal, which is going to come in super handy for your vehicle projects that you want to do, if that's what you're aiming for. Two, you're going to get some grinding practice. You're going to get lots of grinding practice. And it's good because when you're working on auto body panels, you don't want to grind the parent metal down. You just want to grind your welds down. So you're going to want to do that. And secondly, you're going to figure out what settings you need as far as amperages go. Now I got it up at 105, and that was to put this on. But all these corners, these are all welded at 95 amps. This just happens to be 3/16 thick, going on to 16 gauge. So I hope this video gives you some insight, some helpful tips and tricks. This is not pretty by any stretch, but it was never meant to be. It was sole purpose was for practice and to give ideas. So I hope this helps you guys out. If you like this video, hit the like button, drop me a comment, and if you haven't already, subscribe. Thank you for watching.